Dr. Leon Blevins of El Paso Community College Television. Some of you have heard me mention before that my style of interviewing is that of Forrest Gump. Sitting on a park bench, someone sits down beside me and I say, "Who are you?" "Hi, I'm Professor Blevins. And what kind of work are you in? Are you married? Do you have any children?" And so on and so on and so on. And well, this kind of thing happened to me and my wife recently, just a few weeks ago. We were at a corner bakery restaurant here in El Paso. We're sitting in a confined, small table area. Someone sits down next to us, a fellow named Henry and his wife Jody. And we started talking. And Henry looks at my wife and he says, "Excuse me, do you ever have trouble keeping your husband under control?" And she laughed and we all laughed. And so this is how I met this gentleman that I have on the show today. Henry Cathey from New Mexico State University in Las Cruces, New Mexico. Now that's in our neighborhood. So we got to talking about the fact he's involved in the area of science on staff at New Mexico State. I mentioned my television show and that I hadn't done a program on science in a while. And I said, "How about driving down someday in the future? Let's meet at Corner Bakery. I'll buy your lunch. And you come over and let's talk about science." Henry, welcome to El Paso again.
Thank you very much, Professor Blevins. I appreciate you offering me the opportunity to be here today.
Okay, good. So we want to know just a little bit about you and your background and how you got involved in the area of science and science education. And then what title you have at New Mexico State. Tell us about
Certainly. Well, I'm an engineer by training. My undergraduate is in mechanical engineering, and I have a master's degree in mechanical engineering as well from the George Washington University. Undergraduate, I went to Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay.
And my particular area is in the technology side to facilitate science. I've worked for many years designing electronic equipment, packaging for electronic equipment, and many, many years supporting NASA in some of my programs.
Well, I noticed in looking at your information on the internet, you mentioned a lot of places that you've traveled and worked. Is that going as consultants? You're working for New Mexico State. You mentioned a small island off
Sure.
the coast, Atlantic coast or something. How does that work out that you're working for the university while you're living in Virginia?
Well, as an engineer, you work on different contracts to support different types of work. I supported the NASA scientific balloon program for over 20 years. I continue to support that work. I was under contract working for New Mexico State University at NASA Wallops Flight Facility on the eastern shore of Virginia. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of odd. I lived on an island off the East Coast, but I worked for the state of New Mexico. We got the opportunity about 3 years ago to move out here to Las Cruces, and now I'm here locally working for New Mexico State University, the Physical Science Laboratory. Okay. I'm the deputy director of the laboratory, and we do a lot of different types of technological work, a lot of different technology areas in supporting government contracts and private companies and the like. So
a lot of us in the general community, we don't think about the importance of science to our daily lives. Our automobiles, that's science. The airplanes we ride in, that's science.
Most every object that you touch at some point or another has had a scientist or an engineer work on some aspect of it. All of your electronics are kind of obvious, but most everything else, whether there is a technology that was developed by a scientist or an engineer, or the application of actually fabricating that item, designing it, packaging it, putting it into use. There's, in most of those cases, almost everything, there's research and development that's done behind that. And one of the things that we specialize at the Physical Science Laboratory is doing research and development in a lot of different technical areas.
Okay. Now you have children.
Yes, I do.
How many children do you have?
I have 2 daughters.
2 daughters?
Yes.
And they've grown up with a man in science.
Yes, I have been an embarrassment to my children for years, which is maybe a sign of good parenting, I'm not sure. But I've been, my wife and I are blessed with 2 daughters. They're grown, they're out, productive people in society, and it's a joy to watch them. One is in a technical area, and the other is in an education area. but both have a deep appreciation for science and technology in society and in life.
Okay, let's say that there's a young person actually takes time to watch this program, maybe
Sure.
with their parents. What kind of advice do you give them about in high school? What do they need to do to get ready to do the kind of things that you're doing?
The one thing that I've spoken to thousands of school students over the years, and all ages, from elementary school, middle school, high school, college. The one thing about STEM technology, science, technology, engineering, and math, the one thing about STEM is if you're good at those areas, if you like what you're doing, if you are effective at doing the work, whether it's in the technology side of things, the math side, the science, whatever it is, people don't care what you look like, what your background is, what your color, orientation, nothing. If you are good at what you do, you have an opportunity to succeed. People want good, positive folks who work hard. For a student who's looking at these types of careers and these types of opportunities, science and math are kind of obvious in the areas to focus on, but it's where their imagination might take them and where their interests are. There are lots of opportunities, and it's a growing job market for the students. So if a student is interested in anything related to technology, engineering, science, math, there are really good not only job opportunities but career opportunities. I have been blessed with doing things that nobody else has done before in the technology field, and it's quite exciting. It's quite good opportunities.
Did you see the fairly recent movie Hidden Figures about the African American women during the age of segregation? But they were geniuses, and they were hired by NASA, and they helped get John Glenn into outer space. Did you see the movie?
I did not see the movie, but I'm familiar with the book. And the key thing there is, if you are good at what you do, at least my experience in the science, in the engineering area, is if you're good at what you do, people don't care about anything else other than can you perform the job well, which I think is absolutely fantastic. Mm-hmm. It's a great equalizer, and it's a great promoter. If you have skills and abilities, you can pursue them.
Well, those women have become role models around the world.
Absolutely.
To young women, especially those in minority fields of ethnicity and so on, with regard to what they can do. Now, you know, in some cases, there's the put-downs, the people in the school, if you are excelling and they are jealous, and then they put you down. Did you ever have to face that in your own experience?
No, I actually, not through most of my education. I was blessed to be in a place where we were pushed. We were pushed to go as far as we could, whether it was in the technology area or the arts, writing. It didn't really matter. I was blessed to be in a position where the educators, the larger family friend group, the folks at the church that I went to, my parents, they all pushed us to pursue what we were interested in doing.
Well, I was thinking about classmates. Did you ever have classmates that they felt that you were excelling and they were a bit jealous about what you were doing?
I think, you know, kids can be really hard on each other.
No.
And sometimes I think it might even be a little bit more difficult in this day and age. But that's part of the landscape. But one of the things that you have to understand, if you know who you are and comfortable with who you are, then it really doesn't matter.
Uh-huh. Now, you mentioned doing programs in many, many different places. Do you want to give us a chance? You may not call it out of your memory here, but we want to have a chance to scroll across the screen, your telephone number or website. You can give that to co-producer Marco Lara before you leave today, so that people that want to get in touch with you and maybe have you come as a speaker.
Certainly.
Now, you travel a lot. Why do you end up traveling to different places around the world on these projects? Well,
there are a couple different reasons. One of the main reasons is I've been involved in flight operations type work with the NASA Scientific Balloon Program and with our unmanned aircraft systems, our UAS effort, which is one of the key things that I work on now. Travel-wise, supporting missions, I've been literally all over the world. I've spent a fair amount of time in the outback of Australia, in New Zealand, one of the most beautiful places in the world, northern Sweden, and I've had 4 trips to Antarctica, which is a completely different place than probably anywhere else.
And you survived.
I survived. I lived to tell the tale, yes.
What about some of these places that you have been? Did you ever feel that it was rather intimidating, a bit frightening because of places that you ended up?
I've been to some fairly remote locations. I've been to some places. The other reason to travel is for conferences and to present papers, to work with colleagues. The language barrier can be a challenge. One of the things that I always do when I go someplace new is I try to go to the grocery store. That's an equalizer. You get to see a little bit of how the culture is, how things are. There are times where it can be intimidating with whether it's the language or some of the other societal things that are not necessarily what you're used to. But in the big picture, if you have an open heart and open mind and open eyes, you can get along. I've personally gotten along pretty much everywhere that I've been.
Okay. Now, we know that Holloman Air Force Base has a large contingent of drones. Have you been involved in any of those projects with them or other groups?
Me personally, no, not with Holloman. They're doing some particular work there. At the Physical Science Laboratory at New Mexico State University, we have one of the 7 FAA-approved UAS or drone test sites in the United States. And we are a place where people can come and fly a new vehicle that has never been flown before, or we can integrate new sensor systems into some of our flight vehicles or some of our drones to test fly the systems. So we do a fair amount of work here in the southern part of New Mexico, and we've been doing it for a long time, well over a decade here, helping to push technology, helping to safely integrate into the national airspace.
Are those tests taking place at university acreage, or do you go over to White Sands?
Actually, we have, in many cases, we have what's called a COA, or Certificate of Authorization, from the FAA. We have 15,000 square miles of airspace, basically the southern portion of New Mexico, where we can fly. We have certain areas we fly more often. We're based, our flight operations are based out of the airport in Las Cruces, and we fly in many different locations in New Mexico, across the United States, and even internationally.
Have you had the chance to actually use the controls and fly drones?
We have paid professional pilots to do that. I am not a pilot, and I will not touch the controls.
Okay.
So,
well, now we're running into problems of too many drones at too many levels of airspace and the dangers that are developing. What kind of research is being done on those kind of things?
I'm glad you asked that. We at New Mexico State are part of what's called ASSURE. It's a unmanned aerial systems, or UAS, center of excellence that was set up by the Federal Aviation Administration. They have, the FAA set up a program to foster research to help support the FAA in looking at safety issues, everything from impacts with aircraft, ground safety, human factors, how a human interfaces with the controls, to being able to fly beyond visual line of sight or detect and avoid technologies. We are helping the FAA with some of our research efforts, with providing them information to help them work on the regulation side of things.
Now, what kind of project took you to Antarctica?
That was with the scientific balloon program, the NASA scientific balloon program. I have worked and continue to work on the development of a new type of balloon to fly long duration, extremely long duration missions with science payloads. The NASA program supports payloads 6,000 to 8,000 pounds, flying up above 110,000, 120,000 feet. So they're basically like satellites, and in how they operate, but they're much lower cost. It's a more efficient way from a dollars and cents standpoint for certain science to do work that way. I've worked on the development of a new type of balloon. It's called the superpressure balloon, which will fly for very long durations at mid-latitudes, which will open up some new opportunities for science.
Now, you spend a lot of time at the computer simulating these things before you go, say, to Antarctica.
Yes, yes. You just spend a lot of time in most of the technology fields, you do spend a lot of time on the computer, either doing design, analysis, simulations, and running normal scenarios and off-normal scenarios to make sure that you're prepared for a mission.
And what about disaster? Have you ever had any that you felt, whoops, we made a mistake there. Let's go back and try this again. You know, that's a part of science,
Sure.
Trial and error.
Sure, trial and error is an important thing. And there have been some missions that have not fully accomplished what we've wanted to accomplish. But what you do is you take the information, and I've been part of the process of picking through and finding out exactly what went wrong, and you make the changes and improve things. It's a stair-step process, and that's normal to almost all development processes.
You have peer reviews.
We do have peer reviews. We have internal reviews with the folks. It's very good to have a diversity of opinions in the room. You can argue over things, and it's not personal, it's technical. And the idea is to sharpen that pencil as best that you can to get it to the point where you have the product that will do, or the design that will do what you've laid out to do in the beginning.
Okay. Now, is it mainly what you're working with now is still balloon technology, or do you have some other pots out there that you're working
I have multiple hats that I get to wear, which is actually one of the joys of my job. I still support the ballooning with a portion of my time. I'm the manager of the flight test site, the interim manager of the flight test site right now. So all of our flights with the drones or the unmanned aircraft or aerial systems, UASs, are coordinated through the physical science laboratory. That's one of the pieces of my job. I support some other ballooning programs throughout the world. I work on business development, so I get to look at some really innovative approaches on how to advance technology, especially in the UAS world, the drone world. The advances are limited by one's imagination. It is absolutely fascinating what people are coming up with now, technology-wise, and what the potentials are and the possibilities are with drones.
And changes are so fast anymore. Just you're working on this, and suddenly it's changed, and you go to something else. Let's say I'm going to shadow you, say for a week or something. Are we going to get up earlier in the morning to go and get a balloon on the way? Are there certain prime times of the day with heat in the air that you need to get a balloon going? Or how does that work?
Well, with the balloon work, generally the launches are very early in the morning, typically around sunrise or just after sunrise. But the process to get things ready takes many hours before that. On the UAS or the drone work, it can be generally early mornings tend to be better times to launch because one wants less. You don't want to work in the heat of the day.
Right.
Plus, the wind tends to be lower in the mornings. But the missions, depending on what they are, if somebody wants to record something, map something, take data at certain times of the day, you have to accommodate that. It depends on what the end product is and what you're looking at. You certainly don't want to do a thermal map when there's no thermal differential during the day. So, those types of things, they can be mission specific.
What about payload retrieval?
Okay.
Is it necessary to always retrieve that thing that has gone up with the balloon, or do you get enough information off electronics to say we don't need that package anymore? It goes into the ocean.
You design a mission. To retrieve as much information, and this is true of balloon missions or lighter than air missions or with unmanned systems. You design them to retrieve as much of the information as possible during flight, or you have data recording on board. For example, you may be recording something where there's no possible way to telemeter or download the information within the time frame of the mission. So you would land the systems and recover, pull out hard drives, and then process the data from there.
Okay, now you manage all kinds of equipment, vehicles, manpower. How large is your team that you're working with in the immediate functioning at the university? How many people are working
So
with you?
Physical Science Laboratory has about a little over 200 technical people that they're across the board. Engineers, computers specialists, electrical engineers, mechanical, lots of different areas across the technical spectrum. Plus, you can't do technical work in a vacuum. You have to have all of the people who are related to the contract side of things and the accounting a piece of things to keep things in line and to make sure that everything functions the way it's supposed to, that the work gets done as it's requested. So within that, we have several different areas in the Physical Science Laboratory. We have information sciences. We work in cybersecurity and some other things along those lines. And then our space systems, which include missiles and telemetry, the lighter than air balloons, and then our unmanned aircraft systems. So there's a broad spectrum of backgrounds, skills, and abilities where many of them are technical, or they have to have some understanding of the technical aspects to be able to do their jobs.
I have a son-in-law who years ago got a degree from New Mexico State in electrical engineering. I would assume that many of the people that work for you come from New Mexico State. Not all of them, but
We sure try to hire locally, especially with some of the talent that comes out of New Mexico State University. The engineering school does an excellent job, and then the arts and science, especially in the computer areas, do excellent job in educating. But I'll be honest with you, with good graduates, it's tough to try to hire because they want to go where the best jobs are.
And it's hard to keep them.
It's hard to keep folks. It really is, especially when folks are good. Again, I'll go back to it. People don't care what you look like, what your background is, or anything else. If you're good, people want you.
Tell me about a success story. Somebody that you hired, you were wondering about, do I really want to hire this person or not? And then you discover they were really good.
I'll give you a set of success stories. I've hired a number of people over the years, some individuals that have really advanced and moved on through their technical work. But the one point that I would like to point out for me is I've had over 20 co-op students over the years that I have worked with, and I'll be honest with you, I've been hard on them. They'll turn in a report and I will bleed all over it with a red pen because certain things are taught in university and certain things you don't understand or don't learn until you're out into the workforce. And I've worked with a number of co-op students over the years that I've helped them with their writing abilities, how to formulate a report, how to actually do the research, how to really package it, because almost everything is telling a story. If somebody asks a research question, you have to go through and be able to, through the research, the work, the analysis, the testing, be able to tell what that story is. And I've been asked many, many times over the years for recommendation letters from those co-op students. That would be the thing that if I had to highlight, not an individual, but really the opportunity for those young men and those young women, because some of them are really sharp folks.
And the reason that you really need them to be excellent is because you're talking about lives, you're talking about money, budgets, all of those things when it comes to the people that are working under you and with you to achieve the objectives you're trying to achieve. And you're really public servants, right?
Yes, we are.
You're working for the government. You're working for the public.
And I learned early on in life that you have to be a good steward. And a good steward does what they say they're going to do. And when it comes to the financial side of the house, tries to keep things in order and do what they've laid out to do within the budgets that are laid out. There's also the the safety side that you mentioned. I have learned over the years I am not shy when it comes to voicing an opinion if it is something that is safety related. That is something that I've seen it more prevalent now than maybe earlier in my career, and that's a very good thing. It's important to make sure that things are done in a very safe manner, and that if there are any concerns, they get voiced and they get addressed.
Do your employees have a chance to ask for options of where they would like to go and work on certain projects? Not to go to New Zealand just to see a beautiful place, but a certain program that you're working on, they want to go.
Well, it all depends on what work we have. I mean, that's really who the customer is and what type of skills and resources they need to accomplish the job. So the travel is a flow out of that. And as I said, I've been blessed to travel all over the world many times in many different locations to do some really interesting and groundbreaking work. It's been fun for me.
Well, we're glad that you traveled from Las Cruces, New Mexico to El Paso, Texas, a different part of the world.
Yeah, sure, a little bit.
And shared some of your information with us. Well, Henry, any last words you'd like to share with us before our last 2 minutes are gone?
All right, well, I appreciate the opportunity of being here. We have exciting research that's going on at New Mexico State University. Physical Science Laboratory's flight test site is a unique resource. Some of the work that we're doing is unlike any other place in the U.S., and it's quite exciting to be part of advancing technology. There are opportunities for young men and young women in these technical fields, and if they have an inclination, you should go for it. They're well-paying jobs, they're exciting jobs, and I can speak for myself. It's been a fun career doing some of the things and being able to go some of the places. So that's what I'd like to close with. Thank you. I appreciate it.
And your wife Jody keeps you grounded. You don't get carried away by the balloons in your life.
She keeps me grounded.
Good.
She sure does.
Give
Thank
her
you,
our
sir.
regards. And thanks for watching another program, a very unusual program of Perspectives El Paso. Our neighbors are in Las Cruces. Come for another show in the future. I'm Leon Blevins.